So one thing that's on my separate recorder, and I have a lot of notes and some drawings that I should mention, is when I was in high school, middle school, and things like that. Because I was being made depressed, I was being drugged all the time. I would look knocked out and all screwed up on medication one minute, and then I would be normal or seem normal the next as the medication wore off. And as I was doing things like there was one occasion where I cut myself to see if I could feel, stuff like that, as well as 10 years old or 7 years old, I bit myself to see if I could feel. When things like that would go on, people wouldn't understand it, but there was a community people in a lot of these schools and neighborhoods called goths or emos. And I started dressing kind of like them. And it kind of gave me an excuse of what was going on. Oh, I'm just goth, so don't pay any attention. And friends would accept me for that, even though they knew something was wrong with me, and I didn't know exactly what this neurological condition was called or what. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what all these drugs were doing to me when I was a child. So it was a good way to explain this to my friends and people so that, hey, I'm not this weird, it's a style choice. Even though that wasn't the case, it was a good cover story for a while. And I just wanted to point that out that I have like dark poetry. The medication would make me depressed, the cutting. Things like that were easier to explain later in high school by just telling people I was goth and wearing a black shirt with a skull on it. You dye your hair black, you wear a black skull on your shirt, and now everybody accepts you. That was a good way to do that. I mean, it was more of a style choice when you're trying to pick a group to fit in with, a clique to fit in with. That was a good clique for somebody like me going through a neurological disorder. It definitely was able to help me just kind of fit in high school and things like that. But people really didn't ask me what was going on. Um, they really didn't ask me that often. People assumed because of my voice I was homosexual, and they assumed because how I was dressed I was goth, and that answered all their questions. Now, the teachers, the doctors, my parents, I was talking to them. I was telling them about this night. I was telling them about how I can't walk, I'm bumping into things. I can't quite move my body right. These things were definitely being spoken up about, but there was a whole narrative that was being pushed over me and that they wanted to go with. So, whatever I said, I was lying, I was telling a story, it's a fantasy, and I was ignored. So, keep that in mind that what was really wrong with me was never explored. This fantasy, was forced on me. And when I went to school, of course, nobody's going to understand these things. So after the Yu-Gi-Oh and the playing with toys, that was easy. Just play with toys, play with Yu-Gi-Oh all day. That was a whole year of easiness. But after that, I had to, people wanted to know about me. Like, why are you having trouble talking all of a sudden? Why during winter do you not seem to be able to play basketball? Or you can't, during summer you're more mobile, but then during winter you don't move. Why do you jump when people touch you? I just poke you on the shoulder to ask you a question. You jump 10 feet in the air like I electrocuted you. I used to say, I'm goth and I don't like being touched. It explained everything, and people wouldn't, the kids wouldn't make fun of me. They wouldn't try to hurt me, as well as all I had to do was wear a black shirt with a skull on it and dye my hair, and everything's explained. And there's a whole chapter, and there's a lot more to go in on that. But my neurological disorder started at 7 with that overdose, and there was millions of red flags to explain it. Um, some of which where I was the only person involved. So I have a lot of those, but I like to explain the ones where there's witnesses and other people there. Those are true and factual. All these are true and factual, but the ones where witnesses there, that's much better than going with ones where you're by yourself. But there will be a lot of by myself choices, by myself mistakes that I make, and those will be run through. Like, for instance, I got a tattoo. Now, most people probably thought I was getting the tattoo to fit in. That was part of it. There's multiple reasons for every decision. When you're making a decision, there can be more than one reason why you're making that decision. As far as the tattoo goes, what's interesting is while I was getting it done, I was twitching all over the place. I was seizing pretty bad, and this tattoo artist didn't have a license anymore. He got his building shut down, and he wanted to stop over and over. I told him to continue. If I have a seizure, call the ambulance, because this needs to be recorded anyways. And it took many trips, and lots of me begging, and lots of me reminding him that somebody paid for this. And that would be my father and mother paid to cover up the tattoo I did myself. Now, when I did my own tattoo, I could tell something was seriously wrong with my nervous system. And this was another test that I ran to prove that this is some type of neurological seizure disorder. When somebody's giving you a tattoo in the arm, your whole body shouldn't be seizing. That's very clear. You shouldn't be shaking. And the tattoo artist he did refuse several times to continue because he couldn't keep the line straight with me shaking. And there was one tattoo where he made an excuse and said, "I'm too sick, I'm not doing you today." When really it was just, I'm shaking horribly, and he's afraid. He goes, "My art is not coming good if you don't stay still. I do not like my tattoos to come out bad, and if you can't stay still, then that's what's going to happen, kid." And he kept on telling me that. So he knew something was wrong. Even my tattoo artist knew I had a neurological disorder. But yet, the people who lived with me and spent time with me, oh, they don't want to deal with it. They want to make up stories and make up fantasies and narratives to try to avoid the truth. But anyways, that's another type of example of me testing, trying to figure out what was going on with me. And that was at like 22 or something. That's right before I went to Maine. And I tried to explain this stuff to my father and my aunt as well. We had a whole conversation about me passing out on newspapers. But all they said after I gave them, I poured out my heart, I poured out the truth. Do you know what their response was? "Really, Zach? Newspapers?" No question. Not trying to understand me. No. "Really, Zach? Newspapers?" So disrespectful. Such a statement to make that's so disrespectful when somebody's suffering like I am. Their behaviors are unacceptable. I was doing good, and offering somebody who's sober drinks, telling them it's okay to drink, that's a little illogical too. As well as drinking in front of them, taking pills in front of them and then drinking, that's very dangerous as well. You have somebody who's struggling with addiction who really wants to get sober. Can't you go out and drink at a bar and walk home, or take a trolley? Can't you, try something like that? Well, you got to drink so much and so bad that you can't try to help another human being out? Is your selfish drinking behavior that important that you can't try to just do a nice deed for somebody else? And there's children in the house. There's other children in the house as you're doing these things. As you're drinking in front of me and another child. Children are impressionable. If you're going to drink constantly, get aggressive, get angry, look buzzed, then you got to expect that other people are going to see that. Now, I'm trying to get sober, and that's okay. That's on me. That's one of my problems. But if I'm having a discussion with you about serious medical conditions and a night that I seriously got harmed, your response should not be, "Really, newspapers?" in a sarcastic tone. That's what I expect from a teenager, not from a grown adult. But now I know better. I sure do. Even grown adults in their 80s act like children sometimes.